Welcome to the Hilaritas Press Podcast, where we explore the vast world of Robert Anton Wilson. My name is Mike Gathers, checking in with returning guest Nick Tharcher as we discuss his publishing ventures, from the founding of Falcon Press to the current incarnation of original Falcon Press, as well as Reiki and therapy and more. And be sure to stick around to the end to hear Nick's tips on how to get your book published. And so, right here, right now, it is my great pleasure to share with you my chat with Nick Tharcher. Nick Tharcher, welcome to the Hilaritas Press Podcast.
I'm delighted to be here.
Yeah, great to have you again, returning guest. And I want to get to what's going on with Original Falcon Press today. But before we do that, I'd love to cover the origin story, so to speak. It was you and Alan Miller, aka Christopher Hyatt, and I don't recall the details, but I think Israel Regardi may have been involved. Why don't you just give me the lowdown?
Well, Falcon actually began about 1980. That's 45 years ago, which is rather horrifying when I think of it.
It's been a while, huh?
It has. And it was started because of Regardi. Alan had left his practice. He had been, I guess, licensed as a marriage and family counselor, and he was doing primarily Reichian work, but he was also doing a lot of verbal therapy, even marriage and family counseling. But as time went on, he got rather tired of it, saw a lot more issues coming up with legal issues. For example, he had a lot of associations with his patients, and that was considered a no-no as time went on. Dual relationships, they called it.
Yeah.
So he decided to bail, and he had a fair amount of money at that time too, but found that being retired at, how old was he then? 30-ish?
Wow.
Let's see, 1970. He was born in 43, so there we are. Or 1980 rather.
Right.
So Regardi had just around that time sued Llewellyn for some of the titles that he wanted back, and they did a negotiation. Eventually, Regardi got back a number of the titles, primarily the Crowley stuff, but some others as well. And Alan and Regardi sat down and said, well, let's do a publishing company. Of course, neither of them had any experience in publishing, but that's not going to stop Alan from doing it anyway. So the beginnings were some of the Crowley books, like Magic Without Tears, Law is for All. And the question then came, well, how are we going to produce these books? The result was we went and talked to some printers, got some outrageous prices from them, and decided to just do it ourselves. So we ended up with just an enormous garage full of printing equipment and everything from a phototypesetter, which in those days was a pretty primitive piece of equipment. No WYSIWYG, you couldn't see what the page actually looked like. It operated with 8-inch floppy disks, things along those lines. But it was a big improvement over what had existed before that. Still, for the next few years, we were doing our own printing, and that was always a hoot too when we'd bring in sometimes an expert to help us improve things. And he would look at what we were doing, like doing 4-color process work on a 1-color press, which theoretically couldn't be done at all. We had 2 different presses, one that we used for covers, one for the books. And he would look at it and say, I didn't think you could even do that stuff. So we did that for a while. We were doing, of course, Rigardi's books, Undoing Yourself. Well, Dogma Days actually before that, and that was about 1982-ish. Then uh, some very weird and interesting stories, I guess I could tell about that. For example, we had one of our group handling the marketing, and of course, we needed outlets for selling our books. So he would get in touch with bookstores, and that, however, was dependent on gematria. He would look at their phone numbers or he'd look at their
Oh,
addresses and decide whether or not to call them based on that.
wow.
There, definitely some weird stuff going on there.
Awesome.
As
And
time went on, go ahead.
oh, I was just going to ask where you published some Crowley books, you said. Were those just floating around like nobody had claim on the copyright or anything? Or how did that work that you were able to get the rights to those or were
Well,
there
that's a
rights to
wonderful
get?
question. Those were books that Rigardi had been,
Ah,
who thought he had the rights to them. And years past, we, of course, had associations with the OTO at that time. They were attempting to get control over all of the copyrights for every bit of Crowley material there was. And for a number of years during that negotiation, we were publishing a number of other things by license with the OTO. But the issue of things like Laws for All, Magic Without Tears, and several others was still up in the air. Eventually, I guess it was the early 2000s, we did a deal where we gave them back all the rights. They gave us some money, and then it went from there. Except, as I understand it, most of those books never got republished. I don't think Magic Without Tears, Laws for All, and several others are out in the world at all right now. Don't know why,
hmm.
don't really care. But
It's
uh, it was at least a relatively friendly relationship much of the time.
right. Do you know which OTO you were affiliated with? Wasn't there quite a controversy around?
Oh, you are so right. There were a couple, three different OTOs floating around, but this one was the Bill Breeze version, Hymenaeus Beta, uh, and Soto and whatnots. We really had no contact to speak of with.
Gotcha. All right. Well, I kind of forgot where we were in the origin story there, but you were somewhere
Yeah,
around
it was
82, I think, is where we
yeah
left
around
off.
82. Uh, in that time frame, 82, 83, 84, Rigardi introduced us to Bob Wilson. And that was a fun little story too. Bob had submitted Prometheus Rising to Jeremy Tarcher, and they had turned him
Mm,
down. And then he got in touch with us. Alan had him on the phone and did a deal bingo right over there. It's like 10 minutes of talk. Sure, we'll do it. And apparently, not very much long after that, Torture got back in touch with them and said, "Yeah, we'd like to do it." But of course, by that time, it was too late. And that was the beginning of our relationship with Bob. Uh,
yeah. So that would have gone on from, I think Prometheus Rising came out in 85, if I remember right.
Thereabouts, 84, 85, yeah.
And then I don't, was he solely with you folks through from there on? I think there was maybe one book published with trying to like reality is what you can get away with, maybe came out with another publisher, but for the most part, everything came out through you folks.
Yes, he was doing, of course, his fiction work with others. We were handling primarily his nonfiction books, and reality
Hmm.
was one exception. That only had, I think, one print run before the publisher dropped it, and then he brought it to us, and we redid it. We didn't
Hmm.
really care that much, quite frankly, whether the books would sell a whole ton or not, which is what most publishers seem to care about. But A book like Reality, no, it didn't sell all that well. We didn't care.
Yeah.
Just liked having it in our line. And there were a number of books like that. Uh, our focus was on books that would last for decades. And many of the books that we have in our line today go back a very, very long time. We're very happy to have it that way. A lot of publishers look at what the sales are in the first 30 days or 60 days, and they make a decision as to keep it in the line or not based on that kind of stuff. We don't even
Yeah.
think about sales figures for at least 6 months, and then we really don't care anyway.
Yeah, playing the long game with
Yeah.
Robert Anton Wilson. Do you remember one book that came to mind? And I'm drawing a blank on the origin story behind this, but Natural Law was published with Lumponix,
Yes.
and I
Yep.
don't know if
I
you.
miss Lupanics. They were
Yeah,
they were a fun group.
right. I guess there's some backstory there, like the book was written in response to another book, I believe, and I'm drawing a blank. As I said, I'm a little under the weather, and my mind is kind of mush. But um, anyway, so
Yeah, I don't remember the story either, but yeah, there was a story back there. Um, I can't say I'm under the weather, but I do have a bad memory sometimes.
yeah. And then, so is there anything else I'm thinking of? Well, I'm just kind of curious. Israel Regardie, as I understood it, kind of passed his legacy down to Chick and Tabitha Cicero.
Or so they claim.
Okay, I was going to ask if you had a relationship there, or if there's a story to be told, or if you want to get into that.
Well, after Francis died, a couple different Golden Dawn groups tried to lay claim to his legacy. He
Hmm.
did lay out a bunch of seeds here and there. That was very deliberate on his part. He had relationships with various Golden Dawn people, uh, and there was no official legacy of any kind to pass on. But because some of these people had relationships with him, they'd like to claim it. And there were two different groups who shall remain nameless at that time who were competing with each other. And Alan and I used to sit around laughing at them because they're they're just arguing with each other, fighting with each other over what we call bleached bones.
Eh,
And they wanted to enlist us. Each of them wanted us to endorse them in some fashion, and we weren't interested in that at all. Uh, I remember an email interchange with one of them for a while where it started to get acerbic for a while. And I wrote back and said, a plague on both your houses. And the response was, you shouldn't get cursing with a master magician.
Oh,
Ooh,
yeah, be careful who you
I felt
mess with.
very, very, very scared of that time. And that was pretty much the last time we had any contact with the Golden Dawn people at all.
Wow, so that's just another seems like a common story in the occult world of fighting over the legacy.
Yeah, very much so. You saw it with the OTO, um, and you've seen it with many other groups. They come, they go. One group disappears, then gets resurrected with new players who lay claims to things. And of course, they're all preoccupied with legacy of one kind or another.
Right.
You're no good because you didn't do this, didn't have that, and we're the good guys because.
And I am the true legacy holder.
Yeah, it's a joke. It's nothing more or less than a joke.
Yeah. It interesting how our egos can continually get in the way.
Yes, especially with high and mighty mystics.
Well, I think we may have talked about this last time, but I'm going to bring it up again. But what was your relationship or the Falcon Press's relationship with Jack Willis, and I got the impression that Hyatt didn't speak a lot about his Reichian background. Um, I don't know. What can you say about that?
Well, I'll talk a little bit about Jack and even before some of the events that you may be aware of. I had met Jack in Chicago about 1969 or so.
Hmm.
I had come out of my undergraduate work as a chemist in those days, found out that I much preferred learning about chemistry than doing it. So
Hmm.
I did about a semester's worth of graduate work and then bailed. Went to work for a chemical company for a short time, which is a story in itself, but not really germane to what we're talking about. And then my wife at the time was a headhunter, and they had her working on all kinds of interesting and weird kinds of situations. Uh, if it was just a regular old secretarial job, she wasn't interested, but something more interesting, yeah. And Jack was one of those. He at that time was running a computer service bureau, as it was called.
Right.
He
Okay.
provided computing services to other companies. And she got to know Jack a bit. He got to know me a bit. We were both libertarians, so we spent a lot of time talking about economics and politics and such. And then he hired me to be his office manager.
Hmm.
That lasted for a few months because Jack, sadly, was never very good at business. In fact,
As
he managed to fail at numerous businesses, and we'll get to one of those perhaps in a minute when it related to Alan. So lost track of Jack after a while. I moved to Los Angeles in 1971, just before the Sylmar earthquake, as it turns out. Shook me out of bed pretty violently one morning,
yeah.
and ran across Jack's name in some libertarian newsletter. Got back in touch with him, and he introduced me to Alan.
Okay.
Then I undertook some Reichian work with Alan for a number of years, and Jack and I still had a relationship, but it was not real close. Alan used to call Jack Mr. Morality. You can guess what that might have implied. Uh, so Jack didn't fall into the picture very much, but Alan and I both loved the man deeply, but he was a royal pain in the ass to deal with.
Gotcha.
In fact, when Alan uh, left the shrink business, he left his business to Jack, just gave it to him.
Hmm.
And sadly, Jack managed to ruin that one as well. Uh,
Okay.
yeah, and that again was not the only one. He just wasn't good at business.
Most
So,
therapists aren't, from my experience, but that's another story.
yeah, and of course, some of the businesses Jack managed to ruin were before he even became a therapist,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
that happened a lot later. Now, over this time, uh, well before I had met Alan, he knew Rigardi, and Rigardi trained Alan as a Reichian therapist. He also did some training with Jack, and at least according to Alan, he didn't teach him a lot of the things that he taught Alan for reasons that I never had a good understanding of. But I don't think Rigardi trusted Jack with some of the more dangerous kinds of things. And there are some dangerous techniques in Reichian work, which is why Reich himself was so adamant that only people he had trained, only MDs, could undertake Reichian work. Of course, Rigardi himself
Hmm.
did not get his training that way. He got it from a second, third generation Reichian therapist. And then used his chiropractic degree as a front, essentially, for doing that kind of work. Alan had a marriage and family counseling license from California, in addition to a psychology license from Canada. And that was good cover for all of that anyway, at least until it became literally impossible to do any body-centered work as the years went on. I mean, you can imagine going up in front of the licensing board and they say, well, please describe to me what happens when a patient comes in for Reichian work. Well, first I have him take his clothes off.
Yeah. And
End of
then I
story.
touch them. Right, right.
Yeah.
No, I'm a former licensed therapist here in Colorado, and I'm well aware of dual relationships and touch and the taboo of touch, which is just a tricky mess in general.
And it's really become truly insane. I mean, just you've got a patient who's in pain and just trying to give him a hug is
Is no go.
taboo. Yeah, that's just crazy, just crazy. But for years and years, Alan had no problem having business relationships of various kinds with some of his patients. Uh, we had a group that would meet once a month or so, and the 4 or 5 people in the group were all, in one sense or another, involved in business things with Alan. Uh, we had no problems with it. We didn't feel like we were being oppressed.
Right.
Quite the contrary. I mean, even such a thing as after a session with Alan, we would go out to lunch. Every week, we'd go out to lunch. Had some great
Yeah.
lunches too. There's some really good restaurants in LA at that time.
Oh, that's awesome.
So Jack eventually kind of disappeared from our view. And one interesting little tidbit, uh, when we first met Tim Leary, this was about 86, I guess, thereabouts, 87 maybe. We had been introduced to him by Bob,
Hmm.
and Leary was interested in having some of his earlier works reprinted, and we were
Yes.
fine with that. So we flew to California. We were in Sedona at that time, and we were a little early just because of the flight time, and got a car, drove to Beverly Hills, where Tim was living, stopped for lunch at a sushi bar in Santa Monica that we knew. And after we had some lunch, took a little walk down the street. And Alan just turns into this office building. He didn't say a word, had no idea why. We just walk into the lobby of the office building, and as so many of them have, they had a board with the tenants' names on there. And some bitch if Jack Willis's name isn't on that list. And Jack was living on the other side of Los Angeles at the time, so it was kind of a strange place for him to have an office. Uh, we would sometimes go to his house and leave things on his porch, books and things, gifts essentially to him. But we really had very little contact with him until some years later. And that was right around the time that we started the videos for the Radical Undoing series. And
Oh, okay.
uh, Jack wanted to be involved with that. And Alan had certainly a tendency to let Jack have his way in many things up to a point. Jack could be very demanding. And if it got too much so, that got cut off. But Jack decided that he was going to design the Radical Undoing series. If you look at the first video, there's a place where his face becomes briefly visible in the corner.
Oh,
Uh,
interesting.
Alan had a certain way of doing things, and he was insistent. Jack had a different way of doing things, and he was very insistent, and eventually got pushed aside on that and didn't participate any time afterwards. Uh, Eventually, Jack did his home kit, if you will, on undoing yourself type stuff, namely Reichian work,
Right.
and uh, some of it was accurate, some of it isn't. And he even had a footnote or a piece somewhere on some page slamming Allen about something or other, claiming that I guess Jack, had much more involvement. Uh, Other than that, he basically kept his mouth shut, which I think was a good idea. But that was pretty much the last we heard of Jack until after Allen died, and apparently Jack died not long after. I'm not even sure
Mm.
when Jack died.
Well, tell me, there's a whole cast of characters that's kind of gone through the Falcon Press over the years. How did Stephen Heller end up in the stable? So,
That was interesting as well. I had gone to see Steve for some therapy work. I'd heard through some people I knew that he was very good at what he did, and we did a number of sessions together. I found it very, very useful. He really was a master at what he did, and he had written Monsters and Magical Sticks, which he at that time called "There's No Such Thing as Hypnosis." We changed the title at one point, kept his title as the subtitle,
yeah,
took the title from one of his chapters. And so, again, a dual relationship, if you will. I became his publisher.
yeah,
And so that's how Steve got involved.
okay. And what about, I guess, Marvin Spiegelman? He was one of Rigardi's students, is that correct?
Not really.
Okay.
Uh, Spiegelman and Alan had known each other before Alan knew Rigardi. In fact,
Oh,
Spiegelman
wow.
introduced him to Rigardi.
Ah,
And Spiegelman was a Jungian therapist, uh, and he had written a whole bunch of books that didn't do particularly well. We published almost everything that he wrote at one time or another, but they really didn't sell very well. Marvin really was a pretty crappy writer. One little story about him: we got a communication from a Japanese publisher at one time. They were interested in Buddhism and Jungian psychology. Marvin had done a number of X and Jungian psychology books, Christianity and Hinduism and things like that. And they were interested in the Buddhism book, which he had done with a co-author, Miyuki, who was a long tradition Buddhist priest. The Japanese publisher was not interested in anything in the Buddhism book except Miyuki's work. He had no interest whatsoever in what Marvin did. So we sold essentially half the book. Uh, Marvin was a strange guy in a lot of ways. And I don't know that anyone's ever said this before, but Alan had absolutely no respect for the man at all.
hmm.
He was not a nice guy.
No shortage of personalities and
None at all. I
floating
mean,
around.
he was unfortunately a big time moralist who was more than happy to have inappropriate relationships with some of his patients while decrying anyone else doing the same sort of thing.
Hmm.
I don't like
Interesting.
hypocrites. Alan didn't like hypocrites, although he understood them quite well.
Fair enough. And then I think there was at least one or two books published by who I believe was one of the Discordian originals, Camden Benares.
Yes, Zen Without Zen Masters was his major major work,
Yes.
and it's a marvelous book. I love it. Uh, I don't know who has the rights to it now. I'd love to publish the thing. If someone would pop up and tell me who's got the rights right now, I'd be happy to talk to them.
Yeah, I've got an ancient copy here that looks, it was Andor Press is the
Yeah.
publisher of my copy.
Well, a number of the books that we got came out of places like Andor Press. I think that was the case for, yeah, it was Cosmic Trigger. I think they
Oh,
had,
right.
I think they had done it at Andor Press too, but they weren't paying royalties, so the rights got back, and that's how we picked that up. And that was, although Prometheus was the first thing we did, I think Cosmic
Uh,
Trigger really got the ball rolling.
wow, okay. I didn't realize that was your first Wilson book. That's quite a banger to start with. Um, and I guess I'm going to butcher this name, so I apologize to Joseph in advance. But Joseph
Lashevsky,
Lizawiski is okay.
Lashevsky.
Lashowski.
Yeah. And Joe knew Rigardi, and that's how he got into the game. And Joe's view always was to old style magic. And the books that we have in our line now, there's still five of them, five nonfiction books and a couple of horror books that Joe had done too. Uh, it's all old school stuff, Agrippa and such.
Hmm.
And Joe was very much an interesting character. Uh, there's some things I guess I could say, but I'm going to leave off right now.
Okay.
Sadly, he died a few years ago, and his wife not long after. But then one of his relatives got the rights, sold them to us, and so we have the full rights ownership of the copyrights now on his titles. But yeah, Joe was an interesting character, very, very odd. I never met the man, but talked to him on the phone many a time, particularly after Alan died. Uh, he had a tendency to be easily insulted.
Hmm.
So there was a period of several years where he and Alan had no contact whatsoever over who knows what, some nonsense, no doubt. And Joe had issues like that with other people as well. Enough said.
No shortage of characters running around here.
That seems to be the theme right now, doesn't it? No shortage of characters.
That does seem to be the theme. Well, speaking of which, I mean, bringing us more towards the present, sadly, I think we're right around uh, the birthday of Antero Ali and also
Yeah,
the date of
yesterday.
his passing 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And he was quite prolific, especially towards the end there. He was pumping out titles.
Isn't that
Uh,
amazing?
yeah,
Yeah, once he knew he was sick, he just was pushing words out the door as quick as possible. Uh, the first of that group, Last Words, he delivered the manuscript to us, and we had the book on the market in 9 days.
wow. Yeah, I visited him in March of the year of his passing. So I guess that was 2.5 years ago when I sat with him. And he had the Falcon. I think it was like stained glass, if I remember correctly, that
Yes,
you had given him.
I have one right in front of me. Uh,
Okay.
yeah, a friend of the company, if you will, when we first opened Original Falcon, did five or six of those. And
Okay.
Antro, we gave one of them. And that was largely because he was literally the first of the Falcon group to come with Original Falcon.
Okay.
And that was under some
Right.
serious pressure at the time. There was a lot of legal threats made at the time. And he said, to those threats, "Go fuck yourself," and came with us, for which we were eternally and still are eternally grateful. He really made it work.
Yeah, he had that hanging up on his back patio right next to his grill where he was grilling at the time. Seemed very pleased to have that in his possession.
He was also one of our first authors. He visited us in Sedona, and the thing that impressed Alan in particular was that he had published a number of his titles himself. This was a time
Right.
long before self-publishing was a thing. And they sat and typeset Angel Tech on this ancient piece of equipment. It wasn't ancient at the time, but damn, I can't imagine what anyone could possibly do with that enormous typesetter. It's bigger than my desk.
Hmm. Plus, you had a lot of funky illustrations to go with it that must have been.
Indeed. There was a lot of illustrations, a lot of which were redone. One of our group was a guy named Stan Slaughter, who did the illustrations initially for Dogma Days, Undoing Yourself, and many other things. Golden Dawn, of which there were many illustrations there too. Lost track of Stan. I wonder what he's doing, if he's still alive. Interesting fellow. Uh, he was a ballet skier with no knees. He was born that way. And for him to just walk was a conscious effort, step by step.
Wow.
And he was a master ballet skier at that.
Wow, that's pretty wild.
Yeah, and a great artist. So yeah, Antro came. They sat and highlight or typeset Angel Tech over several weeks, and over time, then we did some others of his titles. But yeah, the bulk of his work was in the last few years, and the bulk of his writings and a couple of his films were in just the last months of his life.
Yeah, sitting with him at the end there, that seemed to be the things he was most proud of was his films and his para theater.
Yeah,
Um, I mean, I think if there's one thing that would please him is for all of us to go watch his movies because I think he was really just proud of that.
yeah. And we have all of them on DVDs. Maybe someday we'll convert them to MP4s, but they're
Mm,
huge. I mean, you're talking about 4 GB files or thereabouts for most of them. But we are delighted to have them in the line. They don't sell very often. That's fine. We don't care. They'll be in our line forever and ever and ever.
mm. Yeah, it's fascinating. I don't know much about the original history of his self-publishing and how he pulled that off in the mid 80s, but I did find one of the original copies of his Angel Tech with the black cover
Yeah.
at a used bookstore here in Denver. And I know he was living in Boulder when it was published, I believe, so it must have just somehow found its way to this funky little used bookstore downtown Denver, which,
He was a brilliant man, no doubts about it. And he certainly had a lot of interest. Of course, we came to know him when he was primarily viewed as an astrologer,
right.
and he was quite good at that. But then he got into Leary's Eighth Circuit model, which is Angel Tech, and he did a number of other writings and DVDs along those lines as well. But at the same time, the thing I think that was his greatest love was paratheater and his films, all of
Yeah.
which are just weirder than batshit and delightful to watch.
Yeah, he would always send them to me or prod me to watch them and I knew he loved feedback and I most of the time was just so befuddled I didn't know what to say.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I tried to watch some of them. Some of them I considered not to my taste, shall we say, not my cup of tea. But I enjoyed some of the remarkable things he did with film.
Right, right. I forget the name of the film, but we were in his backyard and he's like, "Oh, here's where this scene was filmed, and this pile of leaves is where that was filmed." And I'm like, "Whoa." He really made creative use of space,
Yeah,
among other things. Just interesting, fascinating fellow. Well, let's go up to the present. You have a kind of a stable of interesting authors. I don't know if Daniel Allen Kelly is a current author or a past author, but
yes,
he has a bunch of books on lucid dreaming.
indeed. There's a lot of books on lucid dreaming, of course, and when he submitted the first of his two books, uh, we were dubious because there are so many out there, but so many of them aren't helpful to the reader, don't really give
Mm,
you a recipe, if you will, for getting into lucid dreaming. And that was the thing that impressed us very much, is that it was a lucid book about lucid dreaming. And so we've enjoyed having both of the titles in our line, and they certainly do quite well.
nice. And then Denny Sargent and Greg Peters have both been on our show here at Hilaritas. They have at least one book each, I think.
Yeah, great
Maybe.
people. Uh, the A couple of the more recent titles that we've done uh, with Gregory, uh, he's he's just a remarkable fellow in his own right, and some of the things that he's done for us, we're very, very happy with. Uh, and again, they sell very well. The more recent of them, which is essentially a book about Crowley stuff, if you will, makes makes some good points that you don't see just everywhere.
Hmm. Yeah,
And
go
I was
ahead.
dubious, I must say, when he submitted the book, New Eon Tantra. He had published that, I think, initially in another form with Weiser. I think it was Weiser,
Okay.
and made a substantial revision uh, for us and added a great deal of material. And I was dubious because I didn't really know how much Crowley was selling these days.
Right.
I love the book, but sometimes I have to make an economic decision. But
Sure.
said, okay, let's do it, and it's been doing just fine.
Yeah, not only is Crowley book going to sell, but just to have some fresh takes on Crowley, who's been no shortage of endless takes on Crowley.
Yeah, and of course, Crowley was very much involved in tantric stuff. He brought a great deal of Eastern mysticism to the West, and particularly in the tantric area, sex magic and such. And to get that all put together in a cogent way, as Gregory has done, makes us very happy.
Excellent. And then, of course, the Eighth Circuit model is near and dear to my heart. And you have, as far as I know, your latest book is with Eighth Circuit Ascension, Doug and Rachel. As I understand it, there's a workbook coming out at some point. Is
Yeah,
that
we're in the middle of that right now. And by the way, Rachel says hello. I
okay?
spoke with her last night.
Nice.
And, and yeah, Eighth Circuit Ascension is focused toward the actual use of the Eighth Circuit model in therapeutic environments. And that includes a variety of therapeutic modalities, including the use of psychedelics. And both she and Doug have lots of background in those areas. The Eighth Circuit Ascension book itself, while very much useful for non-professional individuals, it's very useful there, but it's targeted more toward the professionals. The Eighth Circuit workbook, which we're working on right now, is going to be more toward the non-professional. And there's a
Okay.
couple of other books that in that same line I think Eighth Circuit Descension or something along those lines would be a forthcoming title.
Oh, and what do you have an idea of what the theme there is?
Not a clue.
Okay, fair enough. Well, certainly, integration seems to be a buzzword that is long overdue in the psychedelic therapy scene, and I know that they have included the MAPS, or I'm pretty sure that's included in the Eighth Circuit Ascension book, the MAPS
Very much.
protocols. Yeah,
Yeah.
and something that's well needed. So certainly that may be the biggest contribution the model has right now is sort of a guidebook for psychedelic therapy. So the more publicity that that can get, the better, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, we do seem to be in a kind of strange time where psychedelics, after what, 50 years or more of being suppressed legally, now people are seeing that they actually have some value. Things that Tim Leary was saying, well, 50 years ago. But, well, hell, if you think about it, marijuana became functionally illegal in 1937.
Yeah,
And
well,
so, 75 years later, people are still wondering whether it's dangerous or not. It's still a Schedule One as far as the feds are concerned. Uh, One of the most benign substances I know of, but here it is, still hanging out on Schedule One. You got LSD on Schedule One, ecstasy on Schedule One, things that have clear, unequivocal value to some really serious situations. Their use in PTSD, for example, is pretty well documented these days. And we see it coming to the fore and then backing off and then coming back. And there are certainly at least some people who are doing work out in public, which we hadn't seen for a very long time and couldn't, just because of the legalities.
yeah, I don't follow this too closely, but it seems like the decriminalization or the descheduling of cannabis was it's always something that's right around the corner. And the latest thing I heard is that there was a big setback in the most recent political boondoggle. Again, I try not to follow politics too closely, but it just seems like there's always some kind of circus going on there. MAPS struggling to get MDMA approved despite all the evidence. Was I'm curious, and I don't know if there's an answer to this, but was Reichian therapy a way to discuss some of this more in-depth psychology without venturing into the taboo world of psychedelic therapy back in the day? Does that make sense what I'm asking?
Well, psychedelics, when Reich was alive, he died in 1957,
Right.
but there really wasn't, as far as I know, a whole lot going on with psychedelics at that time. I mean, Hoffman had come across LSD, what, in the 40s, early 50s, thereabouts. So it wasn't something that Reich might have even been aware of, as far as I know.
Right. Right. No, I think what is this, the 50s when it was just starting to get discovered mushrooms in Mexico with R. Gordon Wasson maybe in the 50s and Leary kind of early 60s catching on to that train. And I guess what I'm wondering is and maybe there's no answer here, but was for Falcon Press was Reichian therapy a way to kind of delve into these deeper psychotherapeutic practices without going into the taboo of psychedelic therapy. Not that you were in a fear of taboos at Falcon Press.
No, we would have had no problem at the time. We just didn't have that much presented to us. We got, of course, tons and tons of manuscripts at one time or another, but not very much related to psychedelics. There were a few other people that were publishing things along those lines. Not that much came to us, at least at that time, but we would have been delighted to publish it. I can't think of anything
Gotcha.
we weren't delighted to publish on except Christianity.
There you go. Yeah, you would have had Stan Groff, I guess, being kind of the spearhead of psychedelic therapy, and then he shifted to holotropic therapy when it was criminalized, when psychedelics were criminalized. So, um,
Yeah, and of course, Leary had been using psychedelics very productively while he was still at Harvard. That was one of the things that got him thrown out. Uh,
right,
and I mean, the 5 books that we did of his, the older stuff, really didn't deal that much with psychedelics.
right.
But he was certainly very much involved with him when he was out on the street after he, before and after he got into prison, which was always a fun story. I'm sure you're familiar with it. He wrote about it a lot too.
Right, right. There was, yeah, that's a whole.
And Alan had used psychedelics with a few people in his
Mm,
Reichian work, but it was very much controlled. One of our group was an MD, so he was very much involved in the thing, but it was not something that could ever be publicized. I'm not sure anyone's ever mentioned it until we're talking about it right now. But yeah, there were a few times that that Alan and our associate doctor, if you will, dabbled in it and got
gotcha.
some interesting results, but not something that in the 1970s you could discuss publicly.
Fair enough. Yeah. Well, tell me, you've had 45 years in this very niche area of occult publishing. Any lessons learned over the years? Let's start with that.
Lessons learned. Wow. Well, I
I'm
think one of the lessons that has been learned over and over and over again is that people in the occult are weird, and organizations are weirder still, but they still follow all the same patterns as all organizations do, whether it's the Golden Dawn or the OTO, uh, political nonsense all over the place. But the only group that I've become involved with in any fashion uh, were the Rajneeshis.
Hmm.
They, as a group, I would say, are the best group of people I've ever run into in the occult. Uh, I would say, in the general scheme of things, maybe 5% of the OTO people, 5% or less of the Golden Dawn people are worth the powder to blow them to hell. The Rajneeshis, they may make 20%, which is
Oh,
huge, just huge.
yeah.
I sometimes wonder where they've disappeared to. I'm sure they're around somewhere, and maybe some of them are still involved with that kind of work. Uh, I don't run into them for years now, but great people in the main. At least they had a
Nice.
sense of life. Most of the occult people are death worshippers in one form or another. Just so many of them have just adopted one form or another of Christianity and called it something else.
Right. Old models with new names.
Yes.
Well, yeah, there's only so many Lon Milo Duquettes and Israel Regardie's out there, right? We have to take
Yeah,
what we
Duquette's
can.
still hanging on. He's still alive. Amazing.
Yeah, we had him on the pod. He's full of humor. It's great chatting
Yeah,
with him.
yeah. Lon definitely had a sense of humor.
Well, maybe for the advice for aspiring authors, and if there's any, I can imagine some of the manuscripts you've been sent over the years, but how you might select those manuscripts, any advice for people looking to get published that you might have?
Yeah, I do. And I suppose I can illustrate that best by referring back to a time when we were getting a lot of manuscripts in. Back in the 80s, we actively solicited manuscripts, and we were getting something like 100 a month.
Wow.
Mind you, we only were publishing about 10 books a year at that time,
Yeah.
and many of those were from our existing authors, like Bob Wilson. So, question people have asked me is how in the hell can you possibly evaluate 100 manuscripts a month? Turns out it was really easy. Most of those never made it past the cover letter.
Ah.
Couple of things that were very common. The author couldn't spell his own name. Author couldn't spell the name of his book. Couldn't tell us what was in the book. Or would tell us that there's never, ever been a book like this before. The subject is brand new. And I'd turn around and look at my bookshelf and see a half a dozen books on exactly that same topic. Arrogance all over the place. One cup, it wasn't even a part of a package. It was just a letter we got. I'm thinking about writing a book on such and such a topic. I don't remember what it was. Don't care. Send bids to my lawyer. Bidding starts at $7,500, period.
Okay.
That was the entire letter. Duh. We canned that one. Others were dropped because of just the authors themselves, their attitudes. We had one book, for example, that was submitted. A woman had submitted a book about some issues with her child. And it was definitely one of those major traumas and challenges and heroism. And we liked the book a lot. It was well written, and it was something that appealed to our emotions. So we were just about to send her an offer for a contract when we get a letter from her saying, if you publish my book without my permission, I'm going to sue you. That was the end of that relationship. So if I were to summarize some of what I've just said, write a clean cover letter, make sure that you get spelling and grammar, at least approximating a sense of literacy, because so much of the stuff that we got was purely illiterate, and it's worse today. Include in your cover letter something about the book. Give us a sense of what the book's about. Include 2-3 chapters. PDF form is just fine. Double space it. Put it into a cogent form. Maybe page numbers would be good. Things like that. We definitely want some kind of biographical material. So many of the resumes we get are just puffery. I'd like to know, do you have a degree? Even if it's a phony baloney one, I'm okay with that. But, give us some information on that. Tell us what you've actually done. I'm not terribly interested if you're 21 years old and writing an autobiography. I really am not interested in books about your cats, as much as I love cats. Which, by the way, brings back another totally unrelated story. But during the early days, when Rigardi was still alive, we got a letter from a woman, I think it was in Montana, who said that we owed her royalties on the Crowley books and the Rigardi books, because Rigardi had just shortly before that died. And she said, my cat is the reincarnation of Aleister Crowley, and my dog is the reincarnation of Israel Rigardi, and you owe me royalties.
Nice. Wow, that's quite a collection of pets there.
And you were asking me what my experience has been with people in the occult. There's one of them right there.
Yeah. Wow.
Can you guess what we did with that?
Yeah, I imagine there was a lot of material that went into the circular file.
One of the books that we were talking about doing with Francis early on was one that he titled Liber Nuts.
Yes.
And it would be a collection of letters that he had gotten from occultists. and some of them were absolute unmitigated hoot. But for copyright issues, legal issues, we decided not to do them. And all those letters long ago were destroyed. But damn, it would be fun to do it even today.
Yes, a little liability there, I imagine, but wow, that would be pretty entertaining.
Yeah, I wish I still had them. I'd love to publish something like that. Francis got a hoot out of it, that's for sure.
Well, there again, it seemed like there wasn't you pushed a lot of boundaries with Falcon Press, or that's my impression at least. Was there ever a time where you felt like you were taking a risk with what you were publishing? Uh, Something that was maybe pushing a boundary a little further than you were comfortable with, or was it all pretty much fair game?
Well, I would say that one of the events that happened after, let's see, we had moved to Long Beach, California, I think at the time. We got a call or letter rather from the telephone company telling us that the tap on our phones had been ended. And what was
Okay.
that about? We asked. And they gave us a number of some office in the federal government. I don't remember if it was the FBI or whatever the hell it was. And we called and left a message, never heard back. We intuited that that had to do with Tim Leary.
Ah, fair enough. Boy, yeah, thanks for letting me know.
Yeah, it was always something of a mystery, but it was kind of fun at the same time. Another situation of that kind, the state of California had published through its various legal entities like cops a warning about the Golden Dawn. They had a list of various groups that were considered pedophiles and nasty in one fashion or another, and the Golden Dawn was on that list.
Hmm.
So we got our lawyers in the mix there and had them shut that down pretty quick. But that was
Right.
pretty much as close. It's not like any of us were concerned about ending up in the slam, but it was certainly a possibility.
Yeah, I think I would be a little uncomfortable if I was made aware my phone was being tapped.
Yeah, we thought it was funny at the time. There was obviously some anxiety that went along with it, but not all that much.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, the stuff we do even today has edge to it, and the stuff we were doing back then, perhaps even more so in a number of ways. But we were not interested in sweetness and light. Simple as that. And anybody who thinks otherwise doesn't understand this at all. Of course, a lot of
Right.
manuscripts we got were sweetness and light and didn't really appeal to us. But there were so many books that people would send us manuscripts, not having a clue what we did for a living. And we still get
Yeah.
some.
I see that happen a lot, or I've heard of those similar stories where, or, well, just from Hilaritas Press, again, I'm just kind of a volunteer, but Rasa will say, "This is what I got recently. What do you guys think?" And we'd be like,
Yeah.
Not sure how that fits, but thanks for the submission." Well, I don't really
I would
have
love to see better. I really would love to see more. We don't get that many submissions these days, certainly nothing like the old days. And that's fine. I think many people may be doing some kind of self-publishing, and some of the books that we have in the line today were originally self-published.
right. Yeah, it seems like the psychedelic therapy is the big up hot thing nowadays, but I'm not sure where those books are being printed. That's kind of out of my radar. Well, I don't have any further questions, but I thought I would change my screen here and throw up some books that I got. This
Oh,
this
cool.
is the and or press version of Zen without Zen Masters, so pre Falcon Press.
Yeah.
And I do have a few Falcon Press, new at Inquisition. Yeah, and when I say
Wow, I
Falcon,
think
not
that was the first edition.
yeah, I'm not talking new Falcon. I'm talking Falcon. What does woman want here?
Indeed.
Again,
And the
Falcon.
last word of the book is
Everything
everything.
is. What's this to be continued here? And this is one I really enjoyed this book. What is it called? Just an interview with Israel Regardie.
Yeah, and that also that interview was included in Rebels and Devils
Oh, was it?
as a separate article. So we don't publish that book itself any longer. But
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
and
This is
the interview was great because it really gave a feel for who Francis was, separate and independent from his writings.
right. Yeah.
You
Wait,
can
I
look at
think.
his writings. I mean, Francis was British, and his books have a very British feel to them. But in real life, he was a jokester and a cut up and just fun. And you got a lot better sense of that in that interview.
Yes, it's been a while since I read it, but I've read it several times, and I really got that sense of a fun-loving man. There was a lot of jokes about wine, women, and song, as I recall. And
Yeah, there was a story when Alan was living in Colorado, 9,000 feet altitude. Man, that was tough. But he and Francis put the Golden Dawn together up there. And Alan told me a story when he and Francis went to a restaurant in town, Idaho Springs, Colorado,
yeah,
and they're sitting at the table talking about men and women. And Francis, in a very medical kind of attitude, was talking about penises and vaginas and things. And the guy at the next table apparently was upset with some of the discussion and had something to say, like his wife wouldn't like things like that sitting there. And he and Alan, Francis and Alan, tried to de escalate the situation. This guy just wanted to ramp it up and up and up. You've
mm,
probably run across situations in your own life where you just want to calm it down. You apologize, you do whatever you can to de-escalate, and the other guy just wants to go for it. So Alan, being Alan, just said, "Okay, motherfucker, you want to go for it? Let's go for it."
oh God, Alan did not seem to shy away from controversy and provocation.
No, he grew up in a fairly violent environment.
Mm.
His father was a cop,
Oh wow,
and you may remember in the opening article, I believe it is, to Rebels and Devils, it reads something like, "When he put a gun to my head at age 16, I left."
wow.
His father was a strange fellow. I never met him myself. I did meet his mother, but his father was a police lieutenant in Chicago, and he was a lieutenant because he was the chauffeur for George Halas, the owner of the Chicago Bears. He had to have, of course, a police driver. And so you couldn't be just a patrolman. You had to have some title. So that's how he became a police lieutenant.
Wow, fascinating.
Anyone who knows Chicago in those days can understand uh, why that was. And, one of Alan's relatives was a big time mafioso.
Hmm. Must make for some interesting stories. He seemed like, I mean, like everybody else we've spoken about today, quite a character in his own right.
Yeah. I'm thinking about writing something of a memoir. I don't know if I'll ever get to it, but a lot of stories about Alan, things I experienced directly, things that other people did. Uh, I've at least put together something of an outline, but whether I actually do it, I have very mixed feelings on it. But some of the stories are great. Some of them
Yeah.
I've told in interviews like this, many of them not.
Yeah, I bet folks would love to hear that. That would,
Alan was a very remarkable man, and most people only see certain aspects of him. And things like, or in one of the Radical Undoing DVDs, I think I included some photographs of him, including a trip that he and I took to Israel some years ago. And they
mm,
had no idea that Alan was a practicing Jew, for example, and very supportive of some of the Jewish operations in this country and in Israel.
huh. Would not have guessed that.
Yeah, one of those things very few people know about him. And then then I get occasionally from someone who does know something about that, having seen some of those pictures, like, how do you reconcile that he was this and he was that? People
Everybody's
wants consistency.
everybody wants some kind of perfect being these days and is all too happy to criticize public figures for being imperfect, which just continues to boggle my mind. Like, oh, he's human, no shit.
Yeah, and you nailed it. Uh, I've seen this to one degree or another my whole life, and I'm sure you have too, but it has ramped up to a point where, oh,
Yeah.
George Washington, this, that, and the other, Benjamin Franklin, this, that, and the other. Tell me anyone who is famous, who did something magnificent in his life, who wasn't an asshole.
Fair enough. Amen to that. Yeah. I'm not going to touch that one, but boy.
That would be a subject for a long discussion too.
Right, yeah, that's a whole new can of worms. Well, I'll throw up one more book here since I already mentioned it, but this is the original printing of Ontrow's Angel Tuck.
Yeah,
Of I hate to even handle this book so much. It's
it looks
looks like
like it's in great shape.
it's in perfect condition, which part of must be a testament to the quality of the printing. I don't know if I can show this, but copy 143 of 300, signed by the
Hmm.
author. And then I think he published it again in a white
White
cover.
cover, yeah.
And then you folks picked it up at Falcon Press, or maybe it was New Falcon by then. I don't know the.
That was still Falcon Press. A lot of people don't know why the name change took place, but we had started Falcon around 1980, and there was another company called Falcon Press Publishing Company,
Hmm.
and they did nature books and such things. They were out of Helena, Montana. And from time to time, we would get an order that was for them, and they would get an order for us. And after some years, they asked us, wasn't even a demand letter, to change our name, do something or other, because they had started a very few months before we did. They'd published a calendar or something. So their name uh, had precedence, and we had no problem with that. So that's how we became New Falcon rather than just Falcon.
Gotcha.
And
Okay.
as far as I know, Falcon Press Publishing is out of business now, and we do occasionally get inquiries about, well, this is book on moose, but I don't see it on your website.
Yeah. Have you seen our
Hiking in
website?
Montana,
Uh, Too
so
much.
and
Well,
yes, please.
oh, I just is there anything coming out that I've missed here? We've got the workbook for Eighth Circuit Ascension cooking up right now, as you mentioned, and
We
anything.
expect a manuscript from Phil Hines shortly,
Oh, okay.
a Tantra manuscript. He's been working on it for a while and it's delayed a few times, so I'm not sure just when we'll get it, when we'll see it, but it's certainly one we're interested in. And there's a couple of other things I can't talk about right now, but uh, as I've gotten older, I've slowed down a bit.
Fair, I'm not that old, or I'd like to think I'm not that old, but I sure don't. Even when I'm not cloudy headed with being under the weather, my memory is mush. So I understand. Well, Phil Hines quite the catch. I know he's had a few books out with you, and
Yeah,
I've we've pursued him for the podcast unsuccessfully, but maybe one day, when the time is right, we'll be able to get him on here.
he sure does some great work.
Yeah, he's quite. I've enjoyed his books and his podcast appearances that I've listened to. Well, Nick, I really appreciate your time. Some great stories there. I'm glad to see you keeping on with what's now original Falcon Press, and best of luck to you.
Thank you very much. It's been a just delight talking with you.
Yeah. All right.
Till the next time.
Till next time. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you to Nick for taking the time to chat. Thank you, as always, to the Robert Anton Wilson Trust and to Richard Rasa of Hilaritas Press for editing and production. This is Mike Gathers signing off with love and cheerfulness. Amor et Hilaritas. Hilaritas.